Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to VOC exclusive interview program. For this week, we have a special guest. We want to welcome Salai Za Uk Ling. He is the Deputy Executive Director of CHRO, Chin Human Rights Organization. Thank you so much for joining us with us, sir. And we want to begin our interview program with you. Could you please briefly share us about your background and introduce yourself?
My name is Salai Za Uk Ling, and I have been working with the Chin Human Rights Organization for the past 25 years now. Um, I was born and raised in Tantlang, a town in Chin State, as you know, has been wiped off the map by the military regime. I grew up there till after I graduated high school. Um, and the only thing that I have left in Tantlang is my parents' tombs. So I have spent most of my life in exile, and as I described, I've been with the organization for the past 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, First question I want to ask you is your father is a permanent political leader in Chin State back in the days. How did his leadership influence your journey into human rights advocacy, and how has your family supported your work in this field?
Well, my parents died when I was very young. My mother passed away when I was 9, and my father when I was 12. So there's not a lot about uh, that I remember about my father. However, he had so much influence in my life. I'd say he instilled the kind of values that I grew up with, that informed uh, my future directions, as well as inspired me to be involved in the kind of work that I'm doing today. Just a sense of public service and doing whatever you can to do um, things that benefit others. Um, yeah, unfortunately, my parents passed away when I was very little, and the work that I've been doing, I would say, um, has been informed by the way I grew up, and it's all about life experience. Uh, because back in the days, as um, those of us who grew up at the height of the previous military regimes in the 90s, um, very well know, um, our life was totally unfree. We grew up in a very restrictive environment. We are always fearful for our safety, security, fearful of anyone in uniform. And you, as a young person growing up then, um, you have no rights, basically, and you are at risk of being identified um, as a rebel sympathizer, and you can be arrested anytime at the whims of the soldiers. And you are also, pretty much at risk of being recruited for forced labor any time of the day. And one thing that I vividly remember was the fear that we live with every night, not knowing when the soldiers would come knocking on your door and being taken away. Um, and especially our family, are my our family registration was revoked early on because our siblings, we lived different places after my parents died, and I was left without identity in my own home during my high school years. So I have to report myself to the authorities, even though I was living in my own home, pay a fee so that I don't get arrested in the middle of the night in my own home. So that's the kind of experience that really motivated me when I get the chance that that I must do something about it, however small I can, to contribute back to the kind of freedom that everybody else in the world enjoys. So yeah, it's really been mostly life experience.
Thank you so much for sharing your life experience and how it shaped you this way. Uh, we also understand you studied in Canada, if I'm correct. How did that experience prepare you to document human rights abuses and advocate for the Chin people?
Yeah, I was one of the few lucky ones who was selected by the World University Service of Canada um, to continue a higher education there. I studied political science at Lakehead University, a small university in Ontario. Um, and during all my school years, I was already studying full time, volunteering full time for CHRO. My main responsibility then was to translate um, accounts of human rights violations committed against our people, accounts that personal accounts that CHRO documented back home. So I was dealing with that kind of um, information coming out of um, Chin State, and so I was responsible for both translation and also putting together our newsletter on a monthly basis, so that the international community can um, read and understand what's going on. So I was intimately informed of what's happening back home on a daily basis. So that kind of also taught me how to be more effective at what I do while actually doing it, and at the same time, um, a lot of sad stories coming out, but still um, you get to be in touch with realities on the ground on a daily basis. So while my education was preparing me to be more effective at doing what I do, at the same time, the kind of work that I'm engaged in on a voluntary basis with CHRO uh, was helping me think uh, of how I need to develop myself so that I can be more effective working for the people.
Mm-mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you were in the beginning really starting helping CHRO even in the beginning early ages. So let's talk about CHRO. What inspired you to join CHRO, and could you share a brief history of the organization, including its key milestones, if you could, and how did you think has contributed to CHRO success over the past these decades? What makes those contributions? And if you could, please explain, tell us a little bit about, like, in the early stages, what were the experiences and what were the difficulties that you have experienced?
First of all, I wasn't involved in the founding of CHRO itself. I was inspired to join the organization because it was practically the only organization that was documenting human rights, and I see in it a path for myself. Um, and I started helping with the translation and in various roles that I can imagine myself contributing to the cause. And of course, as you know, back then it was the mid 90s. The organization was founded in 1995. So next year it's turning uh, 30. So of course it was a difficult journey, especially for those who first established the organization. There's no infrastructure. As you know, there was no internet back then, and especially in our region. Um, the international community, although it was aware about the situation about Burma a little bit, they are aware only to the extent that the pro-democracy movement is being led by Aung San Suu Kyi, and those who know a little bit about the the rest of Burma, their knowledge was confined to what happens with people on the Thai-Burma border, mostly Karen or Shan situation. And virtually nothing was known about what's happening in Chin State. Um, and as you'd know, the the time of the CHRO founding, that was the same time that the military um, was starting to, you know, take control of Chin State physically. So heavy militarization of Chin State really at an unprecedented rate. So with militarization naturally comes a lot of human rights violations against the local people, especially as the military tries to establish its bases, and they needed the basic infrastructure such as road, such as their own military camps. So they employed massive human forced labor program. Um, so, I mean, for a place like Chin State, where there's nothing in the way of basic infrastructure, communication was extremely difficult. So people in the day, those working with CHRO, they risk their life traveling from place to place, um, literally, recording incident of human rights violations, which then get sent to the border areas on India-Burma border where there was relative safety, and it was transcribed. So they physically have to, transport their the notes that they've taken interviewing people, which then gets translated and into English and disseminated to the rest of the world. So it was a really challenging time, but you know, um, people were very determined to get the information out so that the international community has some idea of what's going on. So it's been a struggle for CHRO. It's a very humble beginning, but the people that started the organization really did a very, very inspiring job, which also inspired personally. And over the years, CHRO has grown exponentially, and especially if you look at what happened after the coup of 2021. The CHRO has been at the forefront of reporting human rights violations that are so serious in nature that amount to international crimes like war crimes, crime against humanity, crime of atrocities. So if I would single out some of the recent accomplishment of CHRO, first and foremost, it was CHRO information that we provided to the UN Security Council that propelled the Council to have a meeting on Burma in November 2021. As the Burmese military tried to send in a huge convoy trying to take control of Chin State, the Security Council, the UN Security Council convened and put out a statement. So for a small organization like CHRO to be able to contribute to that process is a very significant achievement, I would say. As a penholder of the UN Security Council, the UK, whom we talked to at the time, for example, thank CHRO for providing them the information that they needed to convince other members of the Security Council to discuss the situation in Burma. And it was the documentation that CHRO CHRO did that led to, for example, the filing of universal jurisdiction case against the Burmese military, members of the Burmese military regime to the Philippines and also in Indonesia. So those are some of the few notable accomplishment. In addition, because of the enormity of the challenge that came after the coup, where there was a mass displacement from heavy military attacks against the Chin, that CHRO had to deal with the humanitarian side of the problems as well, because of lack of manpower and capacity. It was practically only CHRO initially that was in a position to respond to the humanitarian crisis that was unfolding very fast in our region. So because CHRO was able to generate world interest in our region, that humanitarian assistance, for example, was flowing in, no matter how small. People were aware about our very existence, because, as I said earlier, when we talk about Burma, their immediate thought is Aung San Suu Kyi or NLD or those in the eastern border. So CHRO managed to position itself um, and put itself in a position where it was able to respond to the immediate humanitarian crisis. Um, so, and not just in recent times, but if you look at what happened to the Chin over the last 20 years or so, in every major crisis that the Chin people have faced, be it the food crisis, be it the landslides or other humanitarian disasters that happened in our region, CHRO has been at the forefront of responding to these crises, although we're not involved as such in the delivery of humanitarian package or humanitarian aid. We make sure that the situation they gets communicated to the outside world, that there's infrastructure in place so that people can work together. So coordinating and creating network where people can collectively respond to those kind of disaster. CHRO has always been at the forefront of that. So and the single success of CHRO, I would say, is, as an organization, as an institution, is the commitment of the people that works in it, and with the shared objective to better the people. And as an organization, we went through different trying times, and our adaptability of the changing situation has been the primary success of the organization, because with changing circumstances and situation, sometimes there's a risk that the organization may not be resilient and collapse under pressure. But CHRO has always been adapting very strategically to different kinds of situation, be it operating from exile, or after coming back into the country, adjusting to local situation. And after the coup, we found ourselves having to flee again, and starting the organization from scratch in exile. But it has always been the determination, as well as the adaptability, that contributed to the success of the organization. And just one thing before I forgot, CHRO is the only locally led human rights organization from Burma that has been accredited by the UN Economic and Social Council, having the special consultative status from Burma. So that in itself is a great recognition that the organization enjoys.
Yes, these are very great achievements, and one can only imagine how difficult these would be. Like, if the you mentioned, the success being, everybody's working really hard, and that's one of the success. It really inspires us, for achieving those, difficulties. So you did mention about the coup in 2021, about how you guys advancing for human rights. And also, you mentioned a little bit about the Philippines. So I want to ask you later on. But the first question I want to ask is, since the 2021 coup, what new challenges has CHRO encountered, and how has the organization adapted its approach to continue advocating for human rights?
Well, simply put, I'd say two main challenges. Of course, internal challenges and external. External being, the coup. So immediately after the coup, the CHRO and all of its staff members were at risk of physical threats from the military regime. So our immediate preoccupation was the safety and security of all of us. Some of our colleagues, their homes were raided. We operated and maintained offices in Yangon and Hakka, and some of those, and all the townships in Chin State. Then some of those offices were raided. So we found ourselves in a situation where we have to save our own life just to continue the work. So many of us fled to the border, and restarting the organization from scratch. And as you would recall, the coup was staged immediately after the COVID pandemic. So there was a lot of movement of restrictions, restriction of movement, just traveling from one place to another, even in exile. So reorganizing was a big challenge, just to have established contacts with some of our staff members were difficult because, of the imposition of communication blackout in various parts of Chin State. But CHRO, we did maintain clandestine network inside the country after the coup, engage in the kind of coordination with members of the civil disobedience movement, with the youth groups, with the network that we have been working with prior to the coup. So trying to make sure that the movement was ongoing. At the same time, how to re-establish ourselves and reposition ourselves so that we are in a better position to respond to what might be coming next. So trying to figure out those basic things was quite a challenge in itself, because we have no means of financial support or other crucial support system. We were lacking in everything, but we always knew what to do in the event of a military coup. Save yourself first. Think about how you reorganize later. So and the challenge, because of the very magnitude of the challenge, we have to be very creative about how to respond to the challenge. And one of the basic strategy, I would say, is trying to figure out how to turn the challenge into opportunity. So we then took it upon ourselves, because we already have the know-how and the basic idea about how to respond to things, and the capacity, the knowledge and experience, that the way to turn this challenge into an opportunity is that what's happening to our people on a daily basis need to be aware of by the international community as they happen. Because all this year we've been complaining about the lack of knowledge or attention being paid to our part of the region. So here's our opportunity, where the regime is using all its military might to put down civil dissent, and the armed resistance that was emerging. Just to make an example of Chin State for the rest of the country. So if you recall, the regime's spokesperson, following their defeat in Mindat, they went on national television and said they will put down, annihilate the Chin resistance in a matter of 2 weeks. Now it has taken them 4 years, and they are losing control of much of Chin State now. So we knew what was coming, and with challenge comes potential opportunity. So by focusing on what we are good at, which is documenting and highlighting, putting a spotlight on the situation, that the world was starting to pay attention to our plight, our situation, and from then on, everything from being in the darkness to a small light shining in the part of the region in Burma where there was always been a lack of information and actual information blackout that was being imposed with the declaration of emergency measures in Chin State, with the curfew, with the a restriction on internet, telecommunications, and everything. So we have been able to turn the table, I would say, in terms of how we deal with the situation, and really the international community for the first time was aware about what's happening in our country, and of course the what our people have gone through is truly unprecedented in terms of the sheer destruction and loss that we've seen in our modern history. So I think, in a way, it's not just turning into the opportunity, but also at the same time the resilience and the will to live that we see in our people in every parts of Chin State has been the primary thing that the regime could not withstand. And I think we are winning in the fight for freedom because of the sheer determination and resilience of our people. We never, if you look back at our modern history, the Chin people never, give up on the fight for freedom. Look at the colonial times. They fought even after the whole of Burma was declared and annexed into the British colony. So I think with that kind of determination, we will eventually win the fight. Sorry, I got carried away a little bit.
No, it's fine, totally fine. Thank you so much for sharing those, stories and stuff. Because, out of all the difficulties, the CHRO came with the, better opportunities, solutions. That really got me. I was like, wow, that's really good. So, I know earlier you mentioned about the Philippines, and the Kantlang town has been one of the most damaged, I would say, cities, town in Chin State. So why did CHRO choose the Philippines, and what significance does this case hold for Kantlang? And following the dismissal in May 2024, what are CHRO's next step towards accountability?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I think, yeah, it's a really important question. First of all, yeah, Thantlang, as the rest of the country and now the world knows, no longer exist on the map as such. And the destruction of Thantlang was to on the part of the military regime to show to the rest of the country that if you resist us, this is how you will see your town. We can turn into ashes. So first of all, if you look back at what happened in Thanh Lang, we knew the destruction was coming because the chief of the military, the Burmese military in Chin State, who happens to be the deputy commander of the Northwestern Military Command, General Muted Line, went on record with Chin leaders at the time, threatening them with total destruction if they resist military rule. So we knew it was coming. So in any criminal case, as you would know, there's an intent, a declared intention of actually destroying the town. So that proves an intent, and they went on record. Secondly, the whole thing was documented in real time. So for the first time, CHRO was able to employ, modern technology like drones to document actual incidents. And so we have all those solid documentation, and we monitored very, very closely what happened to the town day after day. And remember, they attacked the town for more than 30 different times before everybody gets out. So it was documented in real time. We have the visual, we have the testimony, we have the victims, we have the intent. So when we look back at the legal system inside Burma under the military regime, there's no court system that we can turn to. So we started thinking about, if we do want some kind of justice elsewhere, then where would be the best place to go? And Philippines happens to be the country of choice because it's located in Southeast Asia, and Burma being also a part of the ASEAN nation. So why don't we try it in the Philippines, see if universal jurisdiction might be possible in the Philippine legal system. So we started speaking to partners and lawyers, and it turned out that Philippines have a legal precedent where they prosecuted piracy case, which is also part of a universal jurisdiction process back in the early 1900s. So even though there's no recent legal precedent that we can point to that would allow automatic prosecution of crimes that were committed outside of the Philippine territory, the lawyers from the Philippines suggested that this is something that the Philippines legal system could potentially allow. So we picked the Philippines for that reason, first of all. And when we readied ourselves and filed the case, it was later rejected, as you pointed out. And however, we do have a plan to follow up the case. So we will do that by appealing it to the various level of the appeal process, all the way up to the Supreme Court. So we're preparing now to initiate that appeal process again. So the idea is not just trying to bring those people accountable to some form of justice, but also to generate public discourse and policy discussion on the crimes committed by the military in Burma with complete impunity, and any kind of a new Burma in the future could only be sustained if we have real justice, and those people who are committing those crimes so horrible that shock the conscience of humanity, unless they are prosecuted and held accountable, those responsible for those crimes, then will never live in peace. That's why we're trying to generate also greater public awareness and the discussion on the crimes in general, which, by the way, happen every single moment, even as we speak. Yeah, of course, we'll pursue justice outside of Burma and wherever possible in the world, because we are very confident in the type of evidence that any kind of court systems would require in order to prosecute and convict the perpetrators of serious crimes in Burma.
Thank you so much for sharing those. So earlier you mentioned about in CHRO relation with the UN. So with CHRO holding UN consultative status and working with global government officials in the United Nations, have you ever felt intimidated advocating for the Chin people on such an international platform because you hold such a big responsibility?
Well, everything comes with experience, right? Of course, it's always intimidating to go out there in public and make your case. And it's worse if you are an introvert. But the fact of the matter is that over time you build up your self-confidence, and reminding yourself all the time that you are the expert. Nobody knows like you do, because people want to hear about your situation, and you are best placed at talking about your own situation, right? And as a human rights organization, we have systematic documentation of what happened, why it happened, at least why we think it happened, and who are the perpetrators, and what we're very clear in what we'd like to see happen. Um, so, of course, there are people who are naturally articulate and be able to uh, convince people more easily. But we try our best in trying to highlight the situation, because after all, at the end of the day, it's not you, it's something bigger than you. You are representing uh, what people are going through, and you are just merely communicating. You are just the conduit for people to tell their stories. So CHRO being accredited with ECOSOC means that we have the platform uh, within the UN system. When it comes to human rights, we can um, go to any meetings of the UN. When it comes to uh, s- speaking about our issues, we have the platform there, be it the UN Human Rights Council or other mechanisms of the UN. So, it's really about trying to convince other people of what needs to be done, um, based on the facts that we gathered, and the evidence-based uh, information that we generated ourselves. So you have more confidence talking about these things when you are the organization or the people that did it, instead of um, relying on others to do the groundwork and speak on their behalf. CHRO has a very systematic, um, a meticulous system of recording incidents and um, documenting situations. So yeah, of course, uh, there are some occasions where you felt inadequate, even, um, because you meet with all these big people, and then you only have very limited time telling the whole story. And yeah, like I said, advocacy is about convincing others to do things that you cannot do for yourself. Um, so identifying who has the power, um, and who has the interest, and how we align their own interests with ours, so that they can do something about correcting the wrongs. And yeah, um,
Mm.
it's about building confidence, I would say, informed by experience.
Mm. I don't know about you, but if this is me, I would have very difficult time. Well, I want to talk about your position more on that. So, leading CHRO through such a challenging period of time where we have 2021 coup, and this would be like a very difficult time and stuff. But uh, for the Chim people, it might be really. So for the Chim people, it is one of the most difficult time that we're going through. So, what has been the most challenging part of your role, and how do you stay focused amid going violence and hardship?
Um, Yeah, it's not just me; it's everybody that's involved. Because we all have to go through difficult times. At the same time that we're conscious about what needs to be done, and it's a collective effort as well as internal solidarity that has enabled us to put aside whatever emotional toll that uh, has taken up um, in our own lives, and as time goes on, you um, you forget that you are also suffering um, from all the stuff that you hear and see on a daily basis. Um, you know, emotional toll. When it happens so close to home, so close to your heart, it's always a challenge. But over time, you also learn how to deal with those sentiment. And like I said before, it's a collective effort, and a shared um, objective, um, and um, you know a set of values that inspired us in the first place, that enable us to really collectively get through all of this, and be focused on the kinds of things that matter for um, other people, um, and not, if you look it inwardly, then there's a lot of disappointment, a lot of frustration, a lot of um, emotional issues that you need to deal with. But once you are able to see that, despite all of these, that you still have a job to do, so that it helps others, then you realize that um, focusing on what you're good at, what you are supposed to do, would see you through the light. So I think it's in that context that we've been able um, to stay focused on the situation. And yeah, I mean, a lot of our colleagues, they've gone through so much. It's very personal, very, very deep, emotional issues that they need to deal with in their family, in their community. So this is really unprecedented time in our history, that the entire nation is going through such a difficult time, and it's only logical that everybody keeps aside whatever um, thing that prevents us from working together. So I would always, even to especially after nearly 4 years, um, I'd like to really take this opportunity to invite other friends and colleagues to reflect back on things that we went through at the beginning of this movement, where the only thing that matters was to stay focused on how to get rid of the military regime. And everybody was united in both suffering and doing something positive about it, doing our very best. So let's try and refocus our energy, because that was the time that the military was most afraid of us. So determined people getting to united by a desire to get rid of the military regime. So that's the kind of things that I think we should refocus our energy on, and so that we can move ahead and be victorious in this movement.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now let's talk about your life on social media, where you post poetry, such as like you wrote poems and things like that. And I want to ask you, like, how does writing poetry help you handle the emotional demands, if it helps you, demands of human rights work? Because being in CHRO position, like, you will have to go through emotions a lot of many times. And does it influence your advocacy on working?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I've never been a literary person. It was only after the coup where we find ourselves so isolated and so desperate that I try to find some solace in just look for a way to express myself and get whatever that you keep very deep down, get it out, and communicate. So it's really a means of self-expression, not just about me, but to reflect the situation at hand. So poetry, I never learned poetry or knew how to write poetry. It's so two things comes to mind: how to express myself and communicate that feeling, and at the same time be of some value in telling a story about what happened at that time. So for me, it's like keeping a diary, a mental diary of things. Like when I look back at what when I started writing poetry at the time, when I look back at those, some of the poetry, the pieces that I posted on the internet, they just came very naturally, and I would be writing like 3 or 4 poetry poems at within a day, but at the risk of um, sounding so cheap, I would not post those and keep it to myself. But yeah, it's a way of uh, getting out whatever you bottled up inside you, and my real hope was that it will accomplish something other than just writing poetry or expressing my inner thoughts. It will at least reflect on why that particular piece came about and what motivated it at the time, and also just to show that there's some literature values in it as well. So trying to rhyme things, and also to show at the same time that, well, in our mother tongues, it's not that difficult if you really look for pay attention. Then you're so rich in your language, and there are words that can rhyme and work in perfect unison. So it's all of those things combined. Firstly, to let things out, and also hoping that will somehow communicate whatever that is happening to people who are reading it from afar. And also, I mentioned about a diary. When I look back at some of the stuff that I wrote over time, just by looking at that piece, it reminds me of the time, of the place, and of what happened then. So it's a way of keeping yourself busy, and also dealing with your own emotional issues, and knowing that you do have a place to spill things out. So that's the kind of things that would help me in keeping myself focused on other things that matter. So hopefully, over time, looking back at those pieces, that someone very strange to the situation might have some ideas of what happened. So it's kind of a historical record also. Yeah.
So it's combination of everything. Your diary, your work hard.
It's an emotional salad.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I want to ask you about what are your hopes for the future of Chin State in Myanmar, and what role do you envision CHRO playing in achieving lasting peace, justice, and human rights?
um, yeah, the role that CHRO would play, even in a democratic society, if you look at even the freest country in the world, there are issues, basic human rights issues that need to be dealt with every day, and most people are busy focusing on our own life, but you know so in the future, human rights work will always be relevant. It will never end. There will be victims. There will be, people who abuse um, their power, and deny people their freedom, basic freedom. So that's the kind of vision that um, would put an organization like CHRO in uh, always relevant. However, how do we get to that is uh, the the biggest question, and it's only by um, pointing out and highlighting the situation that um, people uh, can become aware, and then by being aware that people realize they need to do something about it, get inspired, and then eventually you know uh, turn something negative into positive. So CHRO, for ourselves, we have what we call the 4 I's principle. Um, it's initiate, inform, inspire, and influence. So in every step or little things that we do, we keep remembering these 4 I's, because it's your own issues. It's about you. Unless you initiate yourself, nobody would come and do things for you. So you have to take the initiative, and you have to inform, be the vehicle that informs people of your situation. And in the process of doing that, you might be lucky to inspire people along the way and joining your cause. And if there are enough people who are inspired, then you eventually influence the outcome, and you get to the point where you want to be. So that's the kind of basic principle that we try to live by and remember in our day-to-day work. But the biggest challenge is still ahead of us. And like I said before, in order for the next generation to live in freedom and in a truly democratic society, we need to redouble our efforts and at least try to stay focused. By staying focused and reminding ourselves of the first day of the movement after the coup. We are so united by our collective desire to get rid of the military regime, to stand up to tyranny and oppression, and we forgot all about our personal leanings or political preference. We just got inspired by a desire to get rid of the military regime, and that's something that we need to remind ourselves of today. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for the reminder. I know you talk about the 4 I's of CHRO. That's very good. Thank you so much for sharing those. So now we coming to closer to an ending. So the last question I have is: the Spring Revolution has brought both hope and challenges, not just Chin people, the whole country of Burma. So how would you define unity and diversity, and what internal issues among Chin people need to be addressed for success? What message would you like to share with revolutionaries fighting for the freedom?
Yeah, again, the same kind of reminder to all of us that we're engaged in something bigger than ourselves for the freedom and liberation of our people. And, we are united by a common enemy, and whatever internal differences that we have is nothing compared to the challenge that we face. Um, so even within an individual self, you are constantly fighting inside of you all the time, um, and that's to really reflect in a greater uh, context, that of course there will be differences, but those differences or diversity should not get in the way of us trying to accomplish something great together. Uh, so that's the kind of basic reminder that we need to pay attention to, uh, and and another thing is not to put all the burden on yourself, because it's quite unfair if you look at what happens with our movement in a larger context. The international community, instead of putting the pressure on the military regime, they're putting so much pressure on those fighting against the military regime. They come and they point out the differences, how disunited we are, how complex the situation is, how complicated. What have you done to make sure that Burma would be intact post-military coup? Uh, I mean, post-military, post-revolution, and they're putting so much pressure on the people who should rather be focusing on getting rid of the military regime, that the unfair burden has been placed on us um, by the outside world, that sometimes that trickles down into your thought process, and you know uh, you kind of you're kind of left astray in your focus. So it's quite deflecting and it's unhelpful. So I would really um, request the international community uh, to pay more attention to putting pressure on the military regime, how we can put this to a close, and you know um, how to give enough support so that the people are victorious, uh, rather than putting so much pressure on the people who are fighting tooth and nail, um, with blood and sweat, uh, on a daily basis. So again, that is something that we also need to remind ourselves of, is that some of these uh, uh, things have come from outside, unknowingly trickling down into our system, and you know um, focusing on the less important matters. Um, so so it's not doom and gloom. It's a bright future that we can share, and we can only do so by staying focused on what really matters, which is getting rid of the military regime and re-establishing a federal democratic union based on the wishes and desire of the entire people of Burma.
Thank you for sharing, Zuko. Our main goal is the common enemy, So, thank you so much, Mr. Salai Za Uk Ling, for giving us your precious time with us. And last, before we close everything, would you like to add anything else? For me personally, I want to request one thing: is what would you like CHRO to be remembered? And what are the messages you want to give it out to next generation or people in general?
Yeah, I would go back to the 4 I's that I was talking about. That really, even in our own individual life, you know, that principle is the key to success. So if you apply that to your everyday situation, even in your own personal life, that you will see uh, what you want to see for yourself at the end of the road. So I mean, for this generation, um, uh, we've been very unfortunate in the last 30 years that every time uh, there was finally some hope of freedom, that our country, went back the other way, and you know um, we haven't been able to live in um, peace and security. Um, but you know, the just to do something about it, just initiate something, uh, and that may be just to pay attention to the situation, and keep yourself up with events on the ground on a daily basis, that will inspire you to do uh, something positive. Especially the younger generations, I would remind, uh, um, humbly remind them that despite the fact that you have been living in exile, your the majority of your adult life, it's no reason to forget about your past, and to really find out for yourself what you can you know do for people back home, and for on your own community, no matter how small a contribution. um, Start engaging in activities that you see you can positively contribute to, and not just be a passive observer. Be actively engaged, and that's the way to ensure a brighter future for all of ourselves.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Again, we will conclude our interview here. And please, for the audience, please follow us our page, share our video, and comment. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.